My child, stop everything right now. Do not let your eyes wander. Do not let your mind drift. Do not scroll away, because this moment is not like any other moment you have lived through before. This is not coincidence. This is not accident. This is not random chance. This is a divine interruption. I, the Lord your God, have broken into your routine, into your very breath, into this present moment to tell you something that carries real weight. If you let this slip by, if you turn away and treat this like just another passing message, you will lose something that cannot be retrieved once it has passed. Listen closely, because heaven and earth have aligned to deliver this directly into your spirit. You think you have time. I am telling you now, time is shorter than you imagined. The hours you assumed you still had, the opportunities you believed would simply wait for you, the doorways you thought would always remain open. Some of these are already closing before your eyes, quietly, without announcement. You cannot afford to be distracted right now. You cannot afford to postpone what I am saying, because postponement in this exact hour carries a real cost. My child, I am speaking with urgency because I love you, and I will not let something valuable slip past you without at least warning you first. If you walk away now, if you dismiss this, you may miss something I have genuinely prepared for you, and the weight of that choice will echo longer than you expect. So stop, be still, lean in. Every word from here forward matters more than you currently realize. I know how often you have told yourself, I will get serious about this tomorrow, or I will slow down and listen when things are calmer. But tomorrow is not something anyone is actually promised. Later may never arrive the way you are picturing it. The breath you are taking right now is itself a form of mercy. Do not assume the next one is automatically guaranteed to you. That is exactly why I am pressing you now with this much urgency, asking you to set down every distraction and focus fully on what I am saying. You may think you are simply reading words on a screen. In truth, this is my spirit reaching directly into your soul, gently shaking you awake before something passes you by. Type Amen if you receive this. There is a kind of noise in the world that would love nothing more than for you to shrug this off and say, I will come back to it later. That noise knows something important. It knows that if you actually stay, actually listen, actually open your heart to what I am saying, something in you is going to shift in a way that cannot easily be undone. That is exactly why the pull toward distraction feels so strong right now. Do not give that pull the win it is hoping for. Do not let yourself be pulled away right at the edge of something meaningful. I am standing here with open hands, with something prepared, with an answer to things you have been quietly asking for a long time. But I will not force any of it into a heart that has already turned away. You have to choose to remain, to actually listen, to actually receive, because this moment is a genuine dividing line between what has been and what could be next. My beloved, I have reached toward you many times before this, in quiet moments in the middle of sleepless nights, through circumstances that felt oddly specific, almost too coincidental to actually be coincidence. Sometimes you noticed, sometimes you brushed it off as nothing. This moment feels different, and it is. This is not another gentle nudge. It is something louder, something clearer, something you cannot easily mistake for background noise. I am asking you plainly, wake up. Do not let this one slip past the way some of the earlier quieter signals did. You are standing at a real crossroads right now, even if it does not feel especially dramatic from where you are sitting. Your next response in this exact hour is going to shape something meaningful about what comes next. I see things you cannot currently see. I know what is unfolding around you, both the good that is coming and the specific difficulty that is trying to form nearby. That is why I am asking you clearly to stop and actually hear this before moving forward with the rest of your day. You have prayed at some point for a sign. You have said quietly, if you are real, if you still care, show me something. This is that answer. This is my response to the things you whispered when you believed no one else could hear you. I am here now, and I am telling you plainly, if you leave this moment without truly engaging with it, you may miss something that has genuinely been prepared for you. If you stay, if you actually listen, something real can begin shifting, starting now. Type Jesus. I am yours completely. If that is true for you right now, there is a reason your heart feels a little different as you read this. A reason something in you feels quietly awake in a way it has not felt in a while. That is not an accident. That is confirmation from somewhere deeper than your own thoughts, that what you are reading carries something true underneath it. Do not talk yourself out of that feeling. Lean into it instead. I am standing, in a sense, at the door of your attention right now, knocking gently rather than pounding. But I am asking you to open it now, not at some more convenient point later today. If you open it, I will come in with real peace, real restoration. Something that actually settles the noise you have been carrying. If you close it and move on distracted, the loss is not dramatic or visible, but it is real, and it tends to be larger than it initially appears. My child, your time here matters more than the pace of your day usually allows you to notice. You are not guaranteed the exact life you have been quietly assuming stretches out ahead of you indefinitely. That is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to sharpen your attention right now, in this exact moment, toward what actually matters. This is why I am asking you to stop everything, just for these next few minutes, and actually receive what I am saying instead of letting it blend into everything else competing for your attention today. You did not stumble onto this by random chance. I placed it in front of you because I knew, somewhere in you, your heart was ready to actually hear it, even if the rest of you feels distracted or tired or unsure. Do not let that readiness go to waste. This is your moment. Do not walk away from it. My beloved child, listen now with your whole heart, because what I am about to say is not something that can simply wait for a better time. I know you believe there will always be another opportunity, another chance, another calmer season, to finally deal with whatever this is stirring in you. I am telling you with the full weight of everything I am, there is real cost to continuing to delay. The urgency pressing on your spirit right now is not simply your imagination running a little hot. It is something real, asking you not to look away. Do you see how this exact moment has been arranged around you? How your steps led you here specifically? Today you may believe you simply stumbled onto this. Nothing about it was actually random before you were born. I had already set aside an hour like this one for you. You are encountering this now because your spirit is ready for it now, even if the rest of your life feels unfinished or uncertain. There is real weight to why this cannot simply wait. Difficulty has a way of quietly circling a life, weaving itself into small gaps, waiting for the exact moment attention is elsewhere. That is part of why I am stepping in now, with this much clarity rather than letting the moment pass unspoken. If this gets brushed aside as just another message among many, whatever was forming quietly nearby gets more room to take root than it would have otherwise. I am not saying this to alarm you unnecessarily. I am saying it because I already see what you cannot yet see clearly, and staying silent about it would not actually be love. Do you remember the smaller moments, the quiet stirrings that once nudged you to change something, to let go of something, to draw a little closer to me? Those were not random feelings passing through you. Those were early signals, gentle ones, calling you back into alignment. You may have brushed some of them aside, assuming there was more time to deal with it later. This moment carries more clarity than those earlier ones did. This is less a whisper, and more something you cannot easily mistake for background noise. I am asking you, directly, to actually respond to it, rather than letting it join the pile of things you meant to get back to eventually. Do you sense the shifting happening around you in the world, in the atmosphere of daily life? The instability, the unrest, the sense that something is loosening beneath the surface of things that once felt fixed. These are not simply unrelated events. They are signals of a kind, pointing towards something larger than any single headline. My spirit is moving with real urgency right now, waking hearts up, sounding alarms in quiet, unremarkable ways, pulling attention back toward what actually matters before too much time passes unnoticed. You are one of the people I am reaching toward in exactly this way, right now. In this exact reading, my beloved child. I am not saying any of this to frighten you. I am saying it to wake something in you before an opportunity passes that will not simply present itself again in the same form. I see the road you are currently walking. I see where certain choices, left unexamined, tend to lead over enough time. I see doors that are open right now that will not remain open indefinitely, if attention keeps drifting elsewhere. That is exactly why I am asking plainly, do not ignore this. Do not gamble carelessly with something this significant. You have told yourself more than once, I will get serious about this eventually. Once life slows down, once things feel more settled. But how fragile is life actually? How quickly can everything shift in a single unexpected moment? That is exactly why I am saying stop everything right now, because your inner life is worth more than any of the temporary things currently competing for your attention. None of those temporary things can actually steady you the way real presence and real trust can. I am here reaching toward you, asking you to take hold of something solid before the noise of an ordinary day fully pulls your attention elsewhere again. Do not assume this particular word is meant for someone else reading it instead of you. I am speaking directly to you. You know it somewhere, because something in you responded the moment you started reading. Do not silence that response out of habit or distraction. This is for you specifically. You asked at some point for a sign. Here it is, you whispered quietly. If you are real, show me something. This is me showing you. This is me answering plainly, in the exact way you needed to be answered today. Type here if you believe this word was written specifically for you. If this moment gets waved away, whatever fills the space left behind rarely improves on its own. Doubt tends to grow louder in unattended silence. Hopelessness finds room to settle in exactly where clarity used to sit. That is not the outcome I want for you, and it is not the outcome that has to happen. But listen carefully. You do not have to walk that particular road. That is why I am speaking this plainly right now. The very fact that you are still reading, still present, still here, means it is genuinely not too late. There is still time to turn your attention fully toward what matters. That window is real, but it is not unlimited. Do not wait for some more dramatic sign before you respond. This is the sign. This is the mercy being extended to you again, in this exact moment. My child, think back over everything that has quietly protected you without you even fully realizing it at the time. The near misses, the moments despair, almost fully closed in and somehow did not. The nights you assumed you would not make it through and somehow did anyway. I was present in all of it, even the parts that felt entirely solitary at the time. I am not promising the road ahead will be easy from here forward. I am promising that with real trust, real presence, real attention, you will have an anchor the rest of the noise cannot provide. Without that anchor, storms tend to hit harder, longer, and with less recovery afterward. That is a heavier burden than you were ever meant to carry entirely on your own. That is why I am urging you now. This cannot simply wait indefinitely. There are, in a real sense, two general directions available to you here. One leads toward something with real substance, purpose, peace that actually holds under pressure. The other leads toward a kind of quiet emptiness that tends to compound slowly over time, mostly unnoticed until it becomes hard to ignore. I am laying this out plainly because I care about you too much to soften it into something vague and easy to dismiss. This decision does not require some enormous, dramatic gesture. It requires honest attention right now rather than later. So hear this again. This was not coincidence. This is intentional timing. The reason this could not simply wait is that whatever has been quietly forming nearby is already in motion, and attention matters more right now than it might on an ordinary day. But if you engage with this honestly, if you open your heart to it even slightly, something real can begin shifting from here. Heaven, in a sense, is leaning close to this exact moment. Do not miss it by letting your attention drift somewhere easier. The risk is real, but so is the actual promise underneath it. The choice is genuinely yours, here in this specific hour. My precious child, let me speak more gently to you now, because I have watched you walk through valleys deep enough that you wondered whether even I could see you clearly down there. You believed at times that the darkness was too thick, the silence too long, the weight too heavy for anyone to actually notice. I want you to know I was present through every single part of it. Not one tear you cried went unnoticed. Not one quiet sigh escaped my attention. I gathered every one of them carefully, the way you would gather something you genuinely did not want to lose. You have asked in the stillness of certain nights, do you even see me? Do you care? Have you forgotten me? Today I am answering plainly, yes, I see you. Yes, I care. No, I have never forgotten you, not for a single moment of any of it. I know the loneliness that has followed you at times. I saw you in quiet rooms when no one else was around, smiling outwardly while something inside felt genuinely fractured. I watched you hold yourself together, carrying weight silently because you were not sure anyone else would understand it if you said it out loud. You were never actually alone in those specific moments. When the emptiness pressed hardest against your chest, that was often exactly when I was closest, even if it did not feel that way at the time. You may not have recognized it clearly, but the brief moments of unexpected peace, the strength that rose in you just enough to get through one more difficult day, that came from somewhere. That was me. You have walked through heartbreak other people never fully knew about. You have carried betrayals that left marks too complicated to easily explain to anyone. You have been let down by people you trusted, and you carried that quietly, rather than making it anyone else's burden. I wept with you, in a real sense, through those moments. Every time something in you broke, something in me responded to it. You may have felt cast aside by people. You were never cast aside by me. You were, in a sense, engraved somewhere. I do not forget. You have asked about prayers that felt unanswered. Nights you whispered things into what felt like empty air, wondering if any of it actually reached anywhere. I want to tell you plainly, none of it went unheard. I heard every word, including the ones you could not fully form into complete sentences, the ones that came out as something closer to a sigh or a sound rather than a clear request. I was working, quietly, in ways that were not always visible from where you were standing. Delay was never the same thing as denial. Silence was never the same thing as absence. What sometimes felt like neglect was, more often, careful preparation, because rushing certain things tends to produce something less lasting than patience does. I remember the days getting out of bed felt like more effort than it should have required. I remember when fear tightened around your chest for reasons you could not always name clearly. I remember when shame whispered that you were simply not enough, and when guilt tried convincing you your past disqualified you from anything meaningful ahead. In all of it, I did not leave. I spoke into your spirit even in the moments you could not consciously hear it. I offered something quieter than the loud things trying to convince you otherwise. You may not fully realize it, but the simple fact that you are still here, still reading, still present in this exact moment, is itself a kind of evidence. You thought you were weak in some of those seasons. You were being carried more than you realized. You thought you were forgotten. You were held closer than you understood at the time. Type here if you believe you were never actually walking through any of that entirely alone. I know about the nights you stared at the ceiling, asking questions no one else seemed able to answer. Do I actually have a purpose? Am I simply existing, or is there something more intended for my life? I want to answer that plainly now. Yes, you have a purpose. You were not an accident. Every detail of who you are was shaped with real intention, not randomly assembled. You have doubted this before. You have been told directly or indirectly that you were not quite enough. I am telling you clearly now, you are not defined by that narrative. You are something closer to a careful piece of work, still being finished, still meaningful, even in its unfinished state. I know about the struggles you have never told anyone about, the habits you have quietly fought, the private wars that only you know the full shape of. I know the guilt you still carry, the memories that occasionally resurface uninvited, the quiet fear that some of it might be unforgivable. Hear this clearly. You are not beyond forgiveness. Whatever weight you have been carrying does not have to define the rest of your story. You are not permanently chained to your worst moments. When I look at the whole of who you are, the failures are not the entire picture. Stop carrying shame that was never meant to be permanent. You are more free than the weight you have been holding on to suggests. I know the moments you looked around and saw other people seemingly moving forward while you felt stuck in place. You wondered quietly, why not me? Why does everyone else seem to be advancing while I stay exactly where I am? I want you to understand your particular path was never meant to mirror anyone else's. Different callings require different preparation, and that preparation sometimes takes longer than it looks like it should from the outside. Every delay you have experienced has been shaping something in you. Every difficult detour has, in ways you may not fully see yet, been protecting you from something. None of it has actually been wasted. Even the parts that felt most pointless while you were living through them. You have been misunderstood by people at times, judged without the full context, labeled based on incomplete information. Their conclusions were not always accurate, even when they felt certain about them. I have always known the fuller truth about you, the sincerity underneath, the kindness you offered even when no one else noticed it. None of that has gone unseen by me. You are not simply what others have said about you. You are something closer to what I actually know to be true about you, which includes far more depth, more worth, more genuine potential than most outside assessments ever captured. I was present in the hardest rooms you have sat in, the waiting rooms, the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the moments you said plainly, "I cannot keep doing this." I was there in all of it, even when it did not feel that way. You may not remember exactly how you made it through certain stretches, but something carried you through them regardless. I want you to hear this clearly now. None of your suffering has been meaningless. None of your tears have been wasted. Every hard season has been shaping something that will eventually make more sense than it currently does. I have been present in all of it, and I am walking you towards something more settled than where you currently stand. So take a little courage from this. Lift your head slightly. You have not been abandoned. You have not been forgotten. I have walked with you through difficult stretches before, and I am not planning to stop now. You belong to something larger than the immediate difficulty in front of you. Let that settle in even briefly, before you move on with the rest of your day. My beloved child, hear me now with a seriousness that goes a little deeper than most of what I have already said, because what comes next matters and deserves your full attention rather than a distracted skim. I do not raise urgency in a person's spirit without real reason behind it. You have asked at times for honesty rather than comfortable vagueness, and I do not want to withhold that from you now. There is real instability in the wider world right now, the kind that eventually touches nearly everyone in some form. Systems people trusted are proving less stable than assumed. Foundations built on shifting ground eventually show their cracks. None of this is meant to frighten you into paralysis. It is meant to point you clearly towards something that actually holds steady underneath pressure. If you keep treating real reflection as something you can indefinitely postpone, that habit tends to compound over time in ways that are harder to notice while they are happening than they are in hindsight. This is not the season to remain in a kind of comfortable middle ground, neither fully engaged nor fully checked out. Something in you likely already knows that. Do not assume there is unlimited time to eventually get around to this. The signs of instability around you are not simply background noise, easily ignored. They are, in a sense, invitations to pay closer attention now rather than later. And yet, my beloved, you do not need to move through any of this in fear if you are genuinely rooted in something steady. Fear tends to belong to those without real shelter. Peace tends to belong to those who have actually taken hold of something solid. That solid thing has been available to you this entire conversation. I am asking you simply to actually reach for it rather than admiring it from a comfortable distance. There are forces, in a real sense, that benefit from you staying distracted right at the exact moment real clarity was finally within reach. That is often precisely when distraction feels loudest, right before something genuinely shifts. Do not let that particular pull win today. You were shaped with specific gifts, specific callings, a specific shape to your life that no one else carries in quite the same way. You are not interchangeable, and what is available to you in this exact season is not infinite in its availability. That is part of why this moment carries the weight it does. Look honestly at the wider world for a moment. Notice the instability, the tension, the sense that certainty is harder to locate than it used to be. This is often what it looks like when something is being built without a steady foundation underneath it. A structure without real foundation eventually reveals that lack, regardless of how solid it appeared initially. What is actually steady tends to remain steady, even when everything nearby is shifting. That is why I am saying plainly, this particular choice does not benefit from indefinite postponement. The real risk here is not only about outward circumstances, it is about what happens quietly inside a person who keeps deferring honest reflection indefinitely. Attention dulls. Response slows. Eventually, the very things that once felt urgent stop registering at all. That gradual numbing is often more dangerous than any single dramatic crisis, precisely because it does not announce itself clearly. That is exactly why I am reaching you now before that particular numbness has fully set in. This is mercy, offered plainly in an urgent form, but mercy all the same. Type Amen if you trust that this word has reached you at the right time, and share it with someone else who might need this same honest interruption today. There is more I want to say to you because a message like this one should not simply end on urgency alone. Urgency without a clear next step tends to fade into anxiety rather than actually producing change, and I do not want that for you. So let me give you something practical now. Something you can actually hold on to beyond the intensity of this particular moment. What I am asking of you is not a dramatic, one-time gesture that resolves everything instantly. It is a willingness to keep returning to this same posture of attention, again and again, on the ordinary days that do not feel especially urgent at all. Most of a person's actual transformation does not happen in the loud, dramatic moments like this one. It happens in the quiet, repeated choices that follow it. The choice to actually pause before reacting. The choice to be honest instead of comfortable. The choice to keep showing up to this relationship day after day, even when it does not feel especially exciting or urgent on any given afternoon. I want you to think of this message less as a single dramatic turning point and more as an invitation into an ongoing conversation, one that continues well past today. The urgency you feel right now is real, and it matters, but it is meant to open a door, not to be the entire house you live in from here forward. I also want to address something you may be quietly wondering, which is whether this kind of urgent message is simply a technique, a way of manufacturing intensity to grab your attention rather than something genuinely meaningful underneath it. I understand that suspicion, and I do not want to dismiss it. There is a real difference between manipulation which tries to create fear for its own sake, and genuine urgency which points towards something real and then hands you back your own agency to respond. I am not asking you to hand over your judgment or your discernment. I am asking you to actually use it fully on the question this message has raised, rather than reflexively dismissing it or reflexively accepting it without real thought. Genuine truth tends to hold up under honest scrutiny. It does not require you to switch off your mind in order to receive it. So examine this honestly, sit with it. Ask hard questions if you need to. That kind of honest engagement is worth more to me than a quick emotional reaction that fades by tomorrow morning without ever actually changing anything. I want to speak now to the specific fear that might be sitting underneath your reaction to all of this. The fear that if you take this seriously, it will require giving up things you are not actually ready to give up yet. Habits, relationships, comfortable patterns you have built your life around. Even the ones you know quietly are not serving you well. I want to be honest with you about this rather than softening it into something easier to hear. Yes, taking this seriously will likely require some real change over time, but I want you to understand the shape that change actually tends to take. It rarely happens all at once, in a single overwhelming demand. It happens gradually, one honest step at a time, at a pace that is sustainable rather than instantly overwhelming. You are not being asked to fix everything about your life today. You are being asked to take one honest step today, and then another one tomorrow, and to keep taking those steps consistently, rather than either rushing ahead recklessly or stalling out entirely from feeling overwhelmed by the size of the whole picture. I also want to speak to something that often goes unaddressed in messages like this one, which is what happens on the ordinary day after the urgency has faded. Tomorrow, this specific feeling of intensity is likely to soften. That is not a sign that today was fake or that nothing real actually happened. It is simply how attention and emotion naturally work in a human life. Intensity is not sustainable as a permanent state, and it was never meant to be. What matters is what you do with what remains after the intensity fades. Do you quietly let the whole thing drift back into the same patterns as before? Or do you carry forward one small concrete change that actually persists past today? I am asking for the second one, even if it is something as modest as 5 honest minutes of reflection each day. or one difficult conversation you finally have instead of continuing to avoid it. I want to speak also to the specific isolation some of you have been carrying, separate from anything I have already said about loneliness. Some of you have wondered whether anyone would actually understand if you were fully honest about where you currently stand, spiritually, emotionally, in the quiet places you do not usually show anyone. I want you to know that honesty, even the uncomfortable kind, is not something that disqualifies you from being loved well. If anything, it tends to be the beginning of actually being known, rather than simply being seen from a comfortable distance. You do not have to present a polished version of yourself in order to be taken seriously here. The real version, unfinished and uncertain as it may currently be, is the one actually being addressed by everything I have said in this message. I want to speak to the specific weariness that tends to accumulate in a person who has been trying, quietly for a long time, without much visible progress to show for the effort. If that is you, I want you to know your effort has not gone unnoticed. Even in the stretches, it felt like nothing was actually changing. Progress in a person's inner life rarely moves in a straight, easily measurable line. It moves in layers, some visible and some not, and it is entirely possible to be making real progress while still feeling stuck on the surface. Do not measure the value of your effort only by how dramatic the external results have looked so far. Some of the most important work happening in you right now may not be fully visible for a while longer. I want to close this particular section by speaking plainly about what I am actually asking of you, distilled down to something simple enough to actually carry forward. I am asking you to stay honestly present, today and in the days following today, rather than drifting through life on autopilot. I am asking you to keep choosing truth over comfortable avoidance, even when truth is more inconvenient in the short term. I am asking you to keep returning to this posture of attention repeatedly, rather than treating today as a single completed task you can now set aside permanently. That is genuinely all I am asking, not perfection, not an instant transformation, simply ongoing, honest attention, offered consistently rather than only in dramatic bursts like this one. I want to speak now to what happens for those who do take this seriously, because I do not want this entire message to feel weighted only toward warning, without also pointing toward what is actually being offered underneath the urgency. What is offered here is not simply the avoidance of some vague negative outcome. It is something more substantial than that. It is a kind of steadiness that holds under real pressure, a peace that does not depend entirely on circumstances lining up favorably, a sense of direction that remains even when the specific path forward is not fully visible yet. This is not a small thing, even though it can sound abstract when described in general terms. Ask anyone who has actually walked through real difficulty while genuinely rooted in something steady, versus someone who faced similar difficulty without that same anchor. The difference tends to be significant. Not in whether hardship occurs, because it occurs for nearly everyone eventually, but in how that hardship is actually carried and what it produces afterward. I am offering you that same steadiness, not as an abstract concept, but as something available to you starting today. If you are willing to keep reaching for it consistently rather than only in this one dramatic moment. I also want to gently address any lingering resistance you might still be holding on to, the part of you that wants to agree with everything intellectually, while still keeping a slight distance from actually living differently because of it. I understand that resistance. Real change is genuinely uncomfortable, and a part of most people naturally resists discomfort even when they can see clearly that the discomfort would lead somewhere better. I am not asking you to eliminate that resistance entirely today. I am simply asking you to notice it honestly, rather than letting it operate quietly in the background without your awareness. Naming resistance clearly tends to loosen its grip somewhat, even before you have fully resolved what to do about it. So notice it, name it, even just to yourself, and then take one small step forward anyway, not because the resistance has fully disappeared, but because you have decided the step matters more than the discomfort of taking it. I want to leave you with something to actually do, rather than only something to feel, because feeling alone tends to fade faster than action does. Before you move on from this message, I want you to identify one honest thing, however small, that you have been avoiding, and commit to addressing it today, even imperfectly. not the entire pattern behind it. Just today's version of it, that single, honest action is worth more than an hour of intense feeling that produces nothing concrete afterward. Let today be marked by at least one real, if modest, change, rather than only by the intensity of reading this particular message. I love you. I have loved you through every part of what brought you to this exact moment, and I will love you through whatever comes after it. Whether you respond perfectly or imperfectly, whether the change you make today is large or genuinely small. What matters most is that you keep returning, honestly, again and again, rather than walking away entirely and not coming back. This was never meant to be the end of the conversation. It was meant to be one honest moment inside a much longer one. The kind that continues for as long as you are willing to keep showing up to it. I want to say something more directly now about the fear that has probably been running quietly underneath this entire message. The fear that even if you respond honestly today, tomorrow might undo it. That fear is not unreasonable. You have likely had moments of resolve before. Moments where something shifted briefly and then quietly slipped back into old patterns within a matter of days. I want to address that pattern directly because pretending it does not exist would not actually help you. Resolve that is built entirely on a single emotional peak tends to fade once the peak passes, the same way any intense feeling naturally settles over time. This is not a moral failing on your part. It is simply how emotion works in every person. Not only you. What actually sustains change over time is not the intensity of a single moment like this one. It is the small, unremarkable structure a person builds around their intention after the intensity fades. A specific time each day to actually reflect, rather than relying on motivation to strike spontaneously. A specific person to be honest with regularly, rather than carrying everything alone in your own head. A specific small practice repeated consistently, rather than a single dramatic gesture performed once and then abandoned. If today feels significant to you, and I believe it does, I want to ask you to do one more thing before you close this message entirely. Decide right now on one small structure you will actually put in place this week, not a vague intention to be different. A specific, concrete practice you can point to and actually follow through on. It might be 5 minutes of honest reflection each morning before you reach for anything else. It might be a specific person you text today to say, honestly, I want to talk about something real. It might be writing down in a single sentence the one thing you have decided to address this week rather than continuing to avoid it. Whatever it is, make it small enough to actually sustain and specific enough to actually measure. Grand intentions without structure tend to dissolve within days. Small, specific structures tend to last, precisely because they do not require the same intensity of motivation every single day in order to continue. I also want to speak to something you may not have expected me to address, which is what to do on the days this all starts to feel distant again. When the urgency of today has faded into the background noise of an ordinary week, that distance is not failure. It is simply the natural rhythm of attention in any human life. No one sustains peak intensity indefinitely, and I have never expected that from you. On those distant feeling days, I want you to return briefly to the structure you built this week rather than trying to manufacture the same intensity you feel right now. The structure will carry you through the quieter days better than emotion ever could, because structure does not depend on how you happen to feel on a given afternoon. I want to say something plainly about doubt as well, because it will likely visit you again after today, the way it visits nearly everyone who takes something seriously and then returns to ordinary life. Doubt is not evidence that today was meaningless. It is simply part of what it looks like to actually engage honestly with something significant, rather than accepting it uncritically and never examining it again. When doubt visits, do not treat it as an emergency requiring an immediate definitive resolution. Simply notice it, hold it honestly, and continue with the small structure you have already put in place. Doubt tends to lose some of its grip over time when it is met with steady, ongoing practice rather than either panic or denial. I want to speak also to what it looks like to actually forgive yourself for the years, or months, or simple days you spent avoiding this kind of honest attention before today. Some of you are carrying quiet regret right now, wishing you had taken something like this seriously sooner, wondering how much time was lost avoiding it. I want you to release that regret as fully as you can. The years that felt avoidant were not entirely wasted, even though they may not have looked like progress from the outside. Every difficult season, including the ones spent avoiding real reflection, still shaped something in you, still taught you something, even if the lesson only becomes clear in hindsight. Today is not diminished by what came before it. It is simply the next honest step, regardless of how many steps came before it or how long the road to this exact point actually took. You do not need a perfect track record in order for today to matter. You only need today itself engaged honestly, followed by tomorrow, engaged honestly again, and the day after that for as long as it takes to become something closer to a settled pattern, rather than a single isolated moment. I want to close by speaking once more to the specific weight you may still be carrying as you finish reading this. The sense that this was a lot to take in, more intense than most of what fills an ordinary day. I want to acknowledge that weight honestly rather than minimizing it. This message was, by design, not light or casual. It asked something real of your attention, and that kind of asking is genuinely tiring, even when it is worthwhile. Rest after this, if you need to. Real rest, not avoidance disguised as rest, but genuine recovery after something that required real presence from you. I am not asking you to sustain constant intensity from this point forward. I am asking for honest, ongoing attention, which includes rest as a legitimate part of it, not a betrayal of it. You have done something meaningful simply by staying present through all of this, rather than scrolling away partway through the way so many others might have. That matters more than you may currently realize. Carry it forward gently into whatever the rest of today holds for you. I am with you in it, the same way I have been present in every quiet, unremarkable moment that led you here, whether or not you were fully aware of it at the time. Type Amen one final time if you are choosing. Today, to keep showing up to this honestly, one ordinary day at a time, rather than only in the intensity of this single reading. And if you share this with someone else, do not simply pass it along as another piece of content moving through a feed. Send it because something in it genuinely reminded you of them, and tell them so plainly in your own words. That kind of honest passing forward tends to matter more than the message alone ever could on its own. It carries something a shared link by itself cannot carry. The simple fact that you thought of them specifically and cared enough to say so. This is how a single moment like this one actually multiplies into something larger than itself. Not through the words alone, but through the people willing to carry them forward honestly. One real conversation at a time.